So this is just a picture really of where the experiments happen. So one thing that we should do as people looking at agility metrics is no one metric is going to give you all of the truth. We have to look at data in different ways, and we have to trust our teams and trust the human beings that we work in to experiment. And what I would recommend is experiment, experiment, experiment. Do not give up on experimenting. And here's where we started experimenting this team, for example, right? 20 days with the whip. There, 20 things that was how many things that they were concurrently working on. They then done an experiment of having a whip of about 15, I think it was, and their throughput went off the roof. They started to deliver more work, right, in less time, right? And I think as Jeff Sutherland says, right, I think half the time, more the work, or double the work, something like that. I think he's got a title of the book of that nature as well. But we continuously experimented, right? So the big message here is experiment with your metrics. And here's another one, to see the experiment in a different way, where they looked at the daily whip, 6 months after the experiment, they run another experiment. The team now said, actually, Haroon, do you know what? We want to do our own experiments. Hey, thumbs up, fantastic. That's what we need. Self-organizing bunch of people, right? And they said, well, actually, we don't need to have 15 whip. That's too much. We're still getting blocked on a lot of things, and we're starting a lot of work. So over lunch and learn, over some lunch and some coffee, back in the day when we could actually go into restaurants and go into canteens, right? We got our canteen food, and we came back to the table and we said, okay, right, what's going on here, guys? What's going on here, team? And a couple of people said, look, we are being dragged by the product owner and by some other people to get more stuff in the queue, and it's really breaking us up. We're all over the show. We're not testing as much. We're not really focusing much. So I said, well, what do you want to do about it? What experiment do you want to run? What experiment do you want to own? Not me. What experiment do you want to own? And they said, look, can we do a whip limit of 8? Because we got 3 developers, 3 testers, blah, blah, blah. Can we just do this, right, and see how it works? Yeah, sure, fine. And this is what it looked like. The daily whip went from 8 to about, I think, 4. And what I saw, which was quite fascinating, was the team dynamics changed. People assumed that superheroes in the team or a person with X amount of knowledge is all they needed. And they were proven wrong, because what happened was, something that I think it's Russell Akoff, I believe I'm pronouncing his name right, the system thinker, who speaks about, in systems thinking, the sum of all the parts do not equate to all the parts of the sum. It's the interactions of the sum of all parts that we forget about sometimes. And in systems thinking, the interactions of processes and entities and whatever components there are within the system and outside of the system are more important, right? To create an environment, or to create a system that is high performing. So what these folks did is that what we've discovered actually was that the developers and testers started to have some really interesting conversations. Different features started to emerge from the team. How can we automate the continuous delivery pipeline? Oh, actually, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this. So by people pairing up and actually limiting the whip, and actually now the developers who got ample amounts of idle time are now pairing up with the testers to actually complete the end of the workflow, the testing is get done, started to create some really interesting, phenomenal interactions between people and human beings. And I would never discount that as a metric of collaboration. A collaboration metric is so important. How are we collaborating? How are we living together? How are we breathing together? Even as a qualitative retrospective to look at collaboration itself, in and of itself, I think is quite a valuable metric. A lot of people forget about that. All these flow metrics are great, but we should look even deeper. Look at the interaction between human beings. How are we living together? How are we working together? How is that relationship, with our stakeholders? How far are we from the goalpost with our stakeholders? How can we visualize that? Well, I think we're here. I think we're here. So doing some kind of qualitative metric, workshops with your stakeholders and with your teams is equally important than this flow metric stuff as well.